Hey, it's Scott once again with great resources for coaches. Today I'm coming to you from a much different setting than you're used to seeing me come to you from. I'm in a locker room. And that's because today's post is about locker room behavior. How do we want our kids handling themselves when they're in this extremely important place, a place that we end up spending a lot of time together as teams? And so today we're going to talk about, some of the different elements that go into locker room behavior. And the first one I want to talk about is the concept that we got to take care of this place. This is kind of a home away from home. This is a team's home. And I'm going to pan around this one. I'm in a middle school locker room right now. And I'm going to kind of pan around the place for you and give you a kind of a view. Okay, there's some clothes there on the floor. But quite honestly, for a middle school locker room, and I'm going to go to a little different area here where you can see this is not bad. We're 2 hours out from the end of the school day. It was not a school day where there was any kind of team practices in here. But at the end of a school day in a middle school locker room, for there only to be a few items on the floor, that's not bad. I've walked into this locker room numerous times where it was a lot worse than this. But we as teams, we as coaches and players, it's up to us to take care of this place. This is kind of like our home. Middle school, you might not have nearly as much of an affinity to your locker room, but at the high school level and then obviously at colleges and pros, there's massive affinity to it. So we need to take care of the place. But more importantly, what's our behavior like in the locker room? Locker rooms get kind of a negative stigma attached to them, and probably for good reason. There's a lot of people who, when they think back to their experience in a locker room, it wasn't very good. Maybe they're picked on, bullied, hazed. There's a lot of bad things that have gone on. We'll hear people talk about locker room talk, when they're talking about kind of vulgar, swearing, just bad language and that. And so locker rooms kind of get a bad rap. Well, part of that is up to us to fix. And one way we fix it is by how we behave in it. So we want to instill in our kids the concept that this is an important place. This is like our home. And so we need to treat it as such, and we need to behave in it as such. Most importantly, what are we doing in terms of how we handle ourselves with pre-practice meetings, pre-game, halftime, post-game meetings? Because this is the place where so often that's where those things happen. And so we want to make sure that our kids understand the importance of really locking in, really being zeroed in on this is an important time for us. This is when we need to make sure that we're really focused. Much like I talked about last week with bench behavior during timeouts or ends of quarters and all, that we need to make sure that everybody's on board, everybody's on the same page, and that's what the pregame talks are about. Halftime as well. Halftime's a little different because in halftime talks, kids are going through what just happened in the first half, and a lot of kids have their minds elsewhere. We need to get them zeroed in, get them refocused, get them back on track so that we can make our adjustments and move ahead. And let's face it, most of the time, depending upon your sport, we probably have about 5 to 7 minutes to make those adjustments and get that talk done because it takes a little while to get into the locker room. We need to talk as coaches, and then all of a sudden you get the kids talking to the kids. You probably have maybe 4 or 5 minutes to get your points across. So we need everybody on the same page. And then, of course, post-game, extremely important time. You just go into a locker room and see how people are acting, what they look like. That'll tell you a whole lot about how the game went. In those tough loss games, it's really hard to get kids focused on much of what you're saying. And so keep it short and sweet. But also, first and foremost, make sure they're listening to you. I always tell my players, we're not going to start changing. Don't start touching your shoelaces, nothing until we're done talking. But I try to keep it as short and sweet as I can. In my younger days as a coach, I was terrible at that. And then I eventually realized they're not hearing a whole lot of what I'm saying anyways. So now I just try to do my best at keeping things as positive as I can, focus on a couple of things that we're going to need to work on before our next game, and then send them out of there on some type of positive up note if we can. At least that's the goal to try and accomplish. So we as coaches need to kind of have an idea in mind as to how we want to handle this very sacred place so that we pass that same type of message on to our players that this is an important place for us and we need to do all that we can to make the most of our time in it. So, what do you do when it comes to locker room behavior? What are you doing to instill that type of stuff into your players? I hope you think about it. I hope you've got a plan, and I hope you do some things to really try and make your locker room the kind of home that a team needs so that they feel some sense of specialness when they come into it. This is Scott once again. I hope you like this concept. I'm going to keep throwing some different ideas at you over the course of the next few weeks. Take care and have a great week.